Today on this edition of Life After Sight Loss TV, we're talking about how it's possible to feel totally alone in a room full of people. What's up, VIPs? Derek here, back with another edition of Life After Sight Loss TV, where it's all about helping you discover life after sight loss. On this channel, we do product reviews, life advice, encouragement, how-tos, and so much more. So if you're new here and that sounds good to you, consider smashing that subscribe button so you don't miss another single video. Recently, I was at an event at a place that I'm somewhat familiar with, but with a lot of people that I didn't know. Now, I knew about 2 or 3 of the people really well. I knew a couple of others somewhat, and I didn't know most of the rest of the people. There was about, I'd say, 25 people at this event, and it was in a small place, and it was kind of one of those things where I was feeling a little insecure. Now, again, I knew the place I was at pretty well, but I didn't know a lot of the people. And what I realized was how easy it was to feel so alone and isolated in a room full of people. You really get inside yourself. Now, let me go ahead and say this. I'm a very social person by nature. I love being with people. I love going out and hanging out with people. I mean, if somebody were to call me right now in the middle of this video, I would dump the video and go hang out with them because I love being with people. Maybe you're different. Maybe you're more of a homebody, but it doesn't really matter. Being with people is just part of the human experience. And so when you go to a certain event, when you go to a social event, a social gathering of some sort, it can be very easy to feel totally alone. And here's just a few reasons why you may feel that way and what you might experience during that time. So first of all, the reality is you may not know a lot of people there. Now, this may not have anything to do with your visual impairment. It just may be a new event that you've never been to before. You're trying something new and you just don't know a lot of people. And whether you're social, whether you're not social, not knowing anybody can feel a little bit, well, anxiety ridden, if you will. Not that that's bad. It just can start the process of feeling totally alone in this room full of people. Secondly, you may know some people, but when they come up and address you, you may not be sure it's that person. So for example, if somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey Derek, what's going on?" I'm like, "Hey, man." I don't know who they are, and I'm then playing that game of Rolodex in my head where I'm scrolling through going, okay, it could be Dave or Joe or Jim. I don't know who these people are, and not that it's bad, but again, that anxiety is starting to build now because I'm like, it could be this person. And then they say something like, "Do you remember me?" I'm like, "Should I remember you?" And they're like, "Yeah, remember we did the thing. We were at the place." And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do totally not remember that at all." What's really bad is when you're with somebody sighted and then that person walks away, you're like, "Who was that?" And they're like, "I don't know." And then you never know. And then later on, they're like, "Oh, you never called me." Anyway, that's a whole thing. The point is, you may not know that person, or you may know that person and not sure it's that person. And then, of course, as a side note, you do the dreaded reintroduction. You're like, hey, nice to see you today. And like, "Yeah, we talked like 2 minutes ago." It's like, oh, this is embarrassing. So that can raise your anxiety level just a little bit. Thirdly, it might be difficult to get around the room at one point. You might be in an area that you're not familiar with, so you don't know where the steps are, where the doorway is, if there's chairs set up, if there's a table of refreshments, you don't know how to get them. You're not sure where the information is, you're not sure where the stuff is, you're not sure where all the things are, and that can be anxiety-ridden as well. So what do? Well, you usually find a place to sit, and you don't move, which again creates more isolation based on where you are. And I've got a trash truck, and this trash truck, everybody, super great. And finally, you may start having these thoughts of, nobody wants me to be here. Nobody likes me. Nobody's coming up and talking to me. They're not engaging with me. And it becomes a big pity party at the regular party you might be at. And that, again, sort of seals the deal of isolation and feeling very alone. And so all these things can lead to this moment of being like, I gotta go. I got to get out of here. Let me give you an example. When I was in college, back when I first lost my sight, within the first year of losing my sight, I met somebody in a class, and they invited me to come over and watch like a championship basketball game. Now, first of all, I'm not a huge sports person, and let alone watching a game, but I was like, you know what? I'm getting to know this person. I should probably go over and, hang out with them, maybe meet some new people. It'd be good for me. I was feeling a little bit lonely because I didn't know a lot of people, so I thought this would be a good opportunity. So I went to that event. Now, let me just run down the thing. First of all, I didn't know anybody. Didn't know anybody but the host of that party. And obviously the host couldn't talk to me the entire time. They had other things to do. They were hosting a party. So I didn't know anybody. Secondly, if anybody came up to me that I happened to know that I didn't know was there, maybe somebody else from a class I'd met once or twice, maybe even the host whom I didn't know all that well, I wouldn't know if it was them. And then I'd have to go through the Rolodex, and at that time it would have been difficult because I just didn't know a lot of people. And so that caused me anxiety. Then I went to a dorm room that I was unfamiliar with. I didn't know how to get around. I didn't know where any of the refreshments were. I mean, I'm talking chips and Coke and stuff. I didn't know where any of that was. And so what did I do? I found a seat, I sat down, and I didn't move. And that again caused me a little bit of isolation and anxiety. And finally, I eventually started having all these thoughts of like, why am I here? I'm not enjoying this. Nobody's talking to me. They're all in talking to their friends. They don't want me here. And what did I do? Well, I faked illness and I left. And I went back to my dorm room, watched the game on my TV, which I could get really close to, and ordered a medium pizza and ate the whole thing myself. Now, that was terrible. Actually, the pizza was really good, but the event was terrible because it was like, oh my gosh, it was awful. Now, again, remember, that was my first year of losing sight. And maybe you're in that state right now, and that's your first year of losing sight, and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally understand that. I feel terrible when I go to these things, and I have fake sickness and gotta leave. Look, I get it. I totally understand, and we can feel alone in those moments. But the point is not to exit and leave and never go to those things. The point is to be aware that that can happen. To be aware that you can feel alone in a room full of people. It can happen. Knowing that you may not know people, you might not be aware that you do know people when they come up to you. You feel very isolated because you can't get around the room. And finally, you start having these thoughts that are probably really lies, but you start having these thoughts that cause you to take a step. And what I want to tell you today is this. Remember, all these things are preparation for those moments. Knowing that, hey, I don't know a lot of people. That's okay. I might not be aware of the people I do know coming up to me, but I can deal with that. I might not know the room very well, but I can ask for help from the host or somebody that I know, even though that's a little bit difficult, especially if you just lost your sight. And if you have those thoughts, remember, they're lies. They're not true. People do want you there. You're welcome. You were invited for a reason, and you have just as much reason to be there as anybody else. So don't believe those lies. So I challenge you, go out and experience those things, those social experiences, even if it's a little bit nerve-wracking, even if you start to feel alone, knowing that you can be prepared in those moments to face those fears and move through them, through the anxiety, through the isolation or whatever, to have a great time at those events. So my question for you today is this. Do you ever feel alone in a room full of people? Have you had those moments and experiences in your life? How did it feel, and what did you do to deal with it? I'd love to hear about it, and I know others would as well, so let me know in the comments below. Hey, if you liked today's video, if you found it helpful, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, share it with somebody you know, and smash that subscribe button so you don't miss another single video. And until next time, remember that sight loss isn't the end, it's just the beginning. My name's Derek Daniel from LifeAfterSightLoss.com, and I'll see you in the next one.